Hey everyone, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, and this is a LEGO representation of me. Now, I do a lot of videos on this channel about toy collecting, and specifically adult toy collecting, because, well, one, that's my hobby, and it's also been my profession for the last 20 years, but it's also an extremely unique hobby. And that's because it's completely dominated by rules. And these aren't rules from the toy makers or even the retailers. They're rules that we make up ourselves, like,
You think that's air you're breathing now?
and that's kind of what it is. It's all about perception. Where can you display toys? What toys can you buy that you can justify getting because you have display space? Are you buying by specific property, by specific scene? And are you an all-in completist, or do you pick and choose, what's known as a cherry picker, if you will, in the hobby? Do you only buy certain versions of characters, say from the 1960s or the 1990s, or maybe even both? Do you collect heroes? Do you collect villains? Will you collect any hero or villain if it falls under a certain category? These are all things that are very personal to each collector. For myself, as an example, I collect 3 3/4 Star Wars figures, and one of the things that I love to collect as a completist is modern versions of the original 92 or 96 or 120 Kenner figures. And while I do occasionally buy figures that don't fall in this category, I mean, you can see a couple episode 1 and 2 figures there, and yeah, there's definitely a Mandalorian in the front who's not from the classic trilogy. Yeah, I break my own rules, especially when it comes to things that are from Star Wars that I really like Dewbacks. Okay, well, Dewbacks are actually from the original trilogy. Maybe that's a bad example. But the point is, we create all of this structure around what we buy. For the X-Men, as an example, in Marvel Legends, I buy X-Men characters from their 1992-ish animated series Jim Lee era look. I don't buy Age of Apocalypse, I don't buy the modern versions of the characters or even their original 1960s suits. Now, there are some toys I've collected by accident. I don't collect the Avengers, yet I have a complete or almost complete set of Avengers. Well, I guess you never really can have a complete Avengers set. I mean, there's like 200 characters that are card-holding members. And sometimes I have to create my own characters to fill out collections because toy companies don't make them, as in the case of Savage Dragon, like Powerhouse and Brainy Ape there that I had to create based on a Captain America and Hulk figure that I no longer wanted. Or sometimes I'll have to do some touch-ups, like I did to Adam Warlock here, painting his skin gold, because Adam Warlock does not have Caucasian-colored skin. Ugh, this figure drove me crazy. And rules govern buying updates of figures, too. When do you have the version you want? Do you take and buy a figure you already have because it's offered in different colors or with a new head sculpt? There are definitely characters that I have bought over and over and over again, the same version of a character, simply because there's improvements being made. One of my rules is I like to have live-action Doctor Strange. Another buddy of mine likes to collect Batman toys and likes to have every single variant of 5-inch Batman that's ever been made. It's a rule that he created that he follows. So why in the world do we create all of these rules to govern our toy collection? Well, a lot of it is to justify or not justify purchases. So I bought an extra cable and an extra gambit just so I could have it on this shelf of sort of my favorite superheroes. Or when I realized that I could display figures in my bathroom, I started buying fish characters with blue skin. Okay, I know that's like a weird category, but hey, if a fish-like character with bluish-greenish skin comes out, I'm going to buy it because I can put it with this collection that now sort of organically has popped up over the years. I didn't start out doing this when I was a kid saying, I'm going to buy every fish. Or something like Masters of the Universe. I already have my complete collection in terms of Masters of the Universe classics and don't really buy more Motu toys, yet I own Motu toys from other lines, like Origins. So why would I buy a merman for Masters of the Universe Origins when this doesn't fit into my toy collecting rules? Well, because he was really cool looking, and I made an exception. So yes, we create rules and we break these rules. And there really isn't any other hobby that is so rule-driven and so personal. In other words, we create these rules ourselves. No one's telling us we have to collect this way. A great example is the elf and shelf rule that my two roommates and I created soon after college. We just thought it was really funny to say, okay, no, I'm not talking about like the elf on the shelf, Christmas thing. We just thought it was really funny with all of the Lord of the Rings figures that were coming out at the time that we said there will only be one elf per shelf. I don't know why, it just sounded funny at the time. But we had a little rule in our apartment that if you had more than one elf on a shelf, you had to buy the other two guys pizza that night. So, yeah, I don't know. What can I say? Adult collectors were a crazy, funny little bunch. But it's all part of the enjoyment of the hobby. And again, there really isn't any other hobby that thrives so much on self-created rules. I even have a bucket of action figures in my office for characters that don't fit in any of the other rules that I've created. So if I want to buy a double of a figure that's on display somewhere, or a figure that just doesn't fit with anything else on one of my shelves, they wind up in this sort of everyday bucket. It's kind of my outside of the rules collection, one could say. For a lot of us, we're all in, but not on everything. We pick and choose. There are some lines we say, I'm going to buy every single figure that comes out in this line. And other lines we say, no, we're not going to do that at all. Now, the idea of collecting everything isn't exclusive to toy collecting. There's a lot of hobbies that involve having a complete set. But it's interesting how we, as adult toy collectors, tend to create rules that don't apply to our entire collection. They tend to be per shelf. Certain shelves have rules and others do not. So why do we do this? Why are we all in on one line, but we pick and choose on another? I mean, they're all action figures. They're all plastic articulated figures. Well, I personally think it comes down to two reasons, which are very unique to the toy collecting hobby, and you really don't see this popping up in other hobbies, even hobbies that are about collecting themselves, whether it's sports memorabilia or, stolen body parts. You're not always going to create rules that govern every single individual shelf. They tend to be more overall rules for your entire hobby. So the first thing that's unique about toy collecting is it's almost always a limited time. Meaning when an action figure comes out, you better buy it because, well, if it's something you want in your collection, it's not like records or books where you could just go to a store and probably get that book forever. I mean, as an example, my personal favorite book of all time is Alexandre Dumas's The Count of Monte Cristo, which if you've never read it, you really should. I mean, come on. If you like Batman, you'll like The Count of Monte Cristo. It's way cooler. Now, you might not be able to buy this version. I think this is the Barnes & Noble leather-bound edition, but this book has been consistently in print for, it's going to almost be 200 years, right? In about 10 years since it was first published. So there's no time limit on being able to enjoy this book. On the other hand, if you wanted to complete Jabba's palace in 3 3/4 scale, well, you had to start collecting 30 years ago because you can't just go to the store and get Effet Mon or that bug-eyed robot or Klaatu or, even Slave Leia, who will probably never be sold on a toy aisle again. Same thing with Rebel Pilots, another area of Star Wars that I really enjoy collecting figures. These figures are not available at retail. Sure, you could pay high eBay prices for them, but there's no way you can buy them currently. So we tend to create rules that compensate for the fact that unlike almost any other hobby, toy collecting is so time limited. The other one is having, again, that complete set. There's nothing worse for a toy collector than to be missing a figure, even if that figure hasn't even been released yet, because it's a constant beacon that says, incomplete, incomplete, you can't see the whole picture, you don't have these pieces. As an example, within my X-Men 6-inch Marvel Legends world, I collect X-Force and X-Factor, and they're both currently missing key members, specifically Feral and Wolfsbane. So, in order to stay on track and ensure that I have a complete collection, in my mind, I have pre-bought both of these figures. So the moment they come out, I'm going to buy them. I bought Siren here, even though she wasn't a founding member of X-Force. Well, she showed up close enough, and yes, I pre-ordered her from Amazon. Why? Because I have a rule that says I buy all X-Force 6-inch figures. Now, there's a lot of hobbies out there. You don't have to be a toy collector. There's plenty of things to do in your spare time. And while there are rules to games like chess or tennis or murder, there are so many rules for toy collecting because with the limited amount of time figures are out and the threat of having an incomplete collection, if we actively break our own rules, meaning if I had passed on buying that Siren figure, well, I'm not exactly saying it's self-harm, but the only person you're harming is yourself. Meaning all that time, all of that money then becomes wasted if you don't follow it through to a conclusion. And that is why we spend so much time creating different rules. They help ensure that our collection will pay off with that complete shelf one day, and it doesn't leave us hanging and realize, oh shoot, I missed something. What kind of rules do you create for your figure collection? Anything as crazy as one elf per shelf? I'd love to know. Leave them in the comments below and let's discuss. Toy collecting is so much fun, and I hope you'll share this video with others who also enjoy this hobby. It's the best way to support this channel, and I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.